I am going to read a question that might help you prepare for your next town hall. If you like the question, I will leave a text version of it in the description below. If you want more questions like these, I will also leave a link to my database. Today's question from my database is about climate change. Question 1. The administration is expanding drilling, opening more public land to fossil fuel development, and weakening environmental protections, while simultaneously restricting wind, solar, and other clean energy projects. Why should the government favor one energy industry instead of letting all sources compete? And will you support a balanced energy policy that protects consumers, creates long-term jobs, and preserves our resources for future generations? I'm going to rewrite this question for another video. I feel like it could be reworded better for a better argument. You may want to reformat this question yourself, because arguing about climate change seems to be really difficult because they're filled with climate change deniers, even though it's like 120 degrees out. Anyway, it's really sad. January 20, 2025, page 709 of Project 2025 is about leaving the UN Convention on Climate Change, and page 366 complains about clean energy subsidies. July 4th, 2025, most clean energy incentives were terminated. August 26th, 2025, Trump canceled offshore wind projects in Rhode Island and Connecticut. March 23rd, 2026, Trump paid a French energy company $1 billion to cancel offshore wind projects. October 24th, 2025, Trump revoked protections from Alaska's National Wildlife Refuge. April 16th, 2026, the Senate voted to remove protections from Minnesota's Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. March 21st, 2026, Trump dismantled the Office on Environmental Justice. April 29th, 2026, Trump weakened the Endangered Species Act. Let's at least take a look at reducing regulations to benefit the rich. There are plenty of other beneficial sections here. For example, clean energy, climate change denial. That's an actual campaign from the oil and drilling companies. The effect that all the cuts have had on things like disaster recovery and fire services. Endangerment of our communities because they're loosening restrictions on environmental protections and dirtying our water and dirtying our air. Stepping away from the Paris Climate Agreement. That you take a look back in 2015, that at that Paris Climate Agreement conference, Obama initiated the Clean Power Plan. This is because the United States is responsible for almost 20% of the cumulative emissions. That's pretty important. There's a reason why we need to take a stronger role in this Paris Climate Agreement. We need to take responsibility for that and do something. You know, you can kind of keep abreast of some of the things that are going on in chronology. You know, it just never stops. I mean, here it is the end of July 2026, and I just heard another thing that Trump did. He claimed the UK's Prime Minister Andy Burnham told him the North Sea was open for drilling, which the UK is saying that's not the case, and that they are absolutely dedicated to keeping the balance between industry and environmental protection. So they're committed to still continuing to protect the environment. Trump wants to muscle his way in there and start doing some more damage. There's a warning, even RFK warned about that in 2016, that Trump would do that, including safe water safeguards. You know, in 2017, national parks protested Trump's climate policies after he advanced 2 major oil pipelines. In 2018, the Heritage Foundation called to repeal NEPA, arguing that environmental reviews slow and increase the cost of infrastructure projects. So the Heritage Foundation wants to dismantle environmental protections too. You know, again, Project 2025, which is the Heritage Foundation's project, page 377 will outline the goals to expand coal production. You know, I mean, there has to be a balance. I understand that folks are out there looking for jobs in industry and trying to make a living for their families. Nobody is going to shame you for that. I completely get it. But we need to have some fair playing field to do that on. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter if you have a job or not, if you don't have water and food and affordability. Like, it's all connected is basically what I'm saying. So you have to use some common sense. He reopened protected Arctic offshore areas to oil and gas leasing. He rescinded a lot of executive orders. You can read through all that. There's one for environmental justice. There's one for climate-related financial risk. So climate change, it's expensive too. Climate change is going to cost you money, whether you think it is or not. It's going to come out of your pocketbook. Strengthening leadership in clean cars and trucks. Yeah, he rescinded a whole bunch of executive orders that were useful. The EPA cut cleanup projects, recycling programs, and anti-dumping efforts. And that's when they started reconsidering regulations on power plants, oil, gas, greenhouse gas reporting, and toxic emissions. Trump dismantled the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. They are trying to weaken the Endangered Species Act so they can expand drilling and mining. That was delayed. So far, it's delayed over bipartisan concern, so everyone's concerned about this. He rescinded the Roadless Rule Act, which protected 58 million acres of national forest. He had the EPA lower appliance efficiency standards. That's in Project 2025 as well, page 378. He ended federal subsidies for electric vehicles. And the administration tried to repeal a 2009 EPA endangerment finding that greenhouse gas emissions are air pollutants that endanger public health and welfare. That's important. Don't you think they should care about you and your kids? There's a read there about the Resolution Copper Project. That project aims to develop copper mining upon sacred and protected Native American holy sites. I think I already said this one, but he removed protections from Alaska's National Wildlife Refuge. And here is an article from The Guardian about ExxonMobil. They had a ExxonMobil-backed climate change denial campaign called Atlas. You can read up about that. That article's from November 7th, 2025. Got some backlash from doctors and health professionals about Lee Zeldin for Zeldin's efforts to weaken greenhouse gas regulations and endangerment findings. The administration rolled back fuel efficiency standards, 50 miles per gallon to about 35 miles per gallon. They made a claim that lowering carbon emissions was the cause for high auto prices. And December 2025, legislation, the SPEED Act was introduced, standardizing, permitting, and expanding economic development. HR 4776, if you want to look that up. It's to overhaul the National Environment Policy Act. The whole point of the NEPA was to force businesses to disclose their environmental impacts before they can receive funding and permits. So it sounds to me like they want to completely overlook that. Reducing regulations to benefit the rich, which is what this is all about. It has nothing to do with you. They don't care what happens with the planet after they're long gone, as long as they're getting their nut right now, right? Beginning of 2026 is when the EPA stopped calculating how much money is saved in healthcare costs and how many deaths were prevented by air pollution reduction measures. So now they're erasing data about the benefit of environmental protections and caring for the people. They're finding glyphosate, that's Roundup, in bread products. We've reversed greenhouse gas regulations. We've cut 75% of research. We've reduced wildlife and climate monitoring. We've shrunken oversight of mining and logging, closed 9 regional offices, and relocated the headquarters. This one's about Argentina. I don't really know why it's in there, but I guess the drill baby drill agenda is spreading because they are removing protections on freshwater reserves too. But, you know, globally, when it happens in one part of the globe, it's going to end up affecting other parts of the globe. Whether you choose to believe it or not, that's up to you. The Senate lifted a ban on mining upstream from the Minnesota Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And here again, April 2026, they're still trying to cut back that Endangered Species Act. Still voiced concerns from both parties. The EPA eliminated drinking water limits for forever chemicals. They rolled back refrigerant regulations intended to reduce emissions. Then they claimed that the move would lower grocery costs. Groceries have gone up. I don't see the connection between these two things. But again, everything is connected, and I feel like more pollution is going to lead to higher prices. Don't believe me? Mark my words. West Virginia is going through something pretty terrible with water contamination from mining runoff. SpaceX is going to receive 700 acres of protected wildlife refuge in Texas. Data centers are seizing houses in Georgia and contaminating drinking water. The Interior Department introduced new guidelines to slash oil and gas fees paid by energy companies, have detailed plans to eliminate methane emissions, and reduce environmental protections again. Trump invoked the Defense Production Act to boost glyphosate production. And SCOTUS ruled that Bayer did not have to warn consumers about cancer risks associated with Roundup. So now it's in our food. And they're not going to monitor for that. And they're not going to take accountability for that. The EPA quit monitoring and testing for microplastics and pesticides in drinking water. So now with all of these damages, they're not going to have any data showing that they made these damages. They're just going to cover it all up. Here's an interesting quote from Robert Wiseman, co-president of Public Citizen. Big Oil's capture of the U.S. government is now complete. The Justice Department that should be fighting to protect clean air and water and avert catastrophic climate change will now work on behalf of polluters to advance the poisoning of people and the planet. Elon Musk's xAI installed more gas turbines without federal permit. The pollution is primarily affecting Black neighborhoods. Okay, I went a little far and added some more information from my file. You're welcome. I'm sorry. But thank you for watching. Take care.